Hello and welcome to Tri-State Life. I'm your host, Gary Bryan, and I'm relatively new to the area, but if there's one thing I've learned in my short time here, is that this community has a story to tell. So I'm heading out to see what makes the Tri-State tick. In a little bit, we'll have a Warwick County cowboy and a jewelry maker with a twist. We'll even learn how to make yarn. But first, a craftsman whose art is, well, for the birds. Hobbies are an important part of a person's day-to-day life.
You got to keep going. You got to have a reason to get up every day. You got to stay active and busy.
That's no different for Chuck Brunting.
I was born and raised in Evansville, born in 1950. Actually, I lived about a block away from here. I've done construction my whole life. I was a plumber and pipe fitter for 35 years. I've always had rental properties. So I come back to this area when I retired, which was about 12 years ago. And then I just, after I retired, I got a sister and brother-in-law that lives in Florida, went down to visit them. There was a 90-year-old gentleman that builds birdhouses and lawn ornaments, and so I got to talking to him, and that's kind of got the fever from him about doing things to stay active.
Looking to keep life after retirement productive, Chuck began putting the tools in his garage to work.
First started out building yard ornaments and Christmas ornaments. And then I got to building birdhouses, kind of keying off on that.
Birdhouses. These avian apartments are pretty simple. 4 walls and a roof. Just enough for your average finch or cardinal. But as you look around Chuck's shop, you can see that this artist has taken birdhouse building to another level.
Sure. This one here is Bob Zimmerman Jr. calls it the Steve Martin birdhouse, and it's just, again, I don't know, just having fun with different stuff. I started out with a pattern, then I changed that to either what I saw on the computer, or if I take pictures of buildings, anything that had some color to it. If I may be driving down a highway and see a building, or if I go to Florida, I see something just unique, a little bit different.
Chuck's background in construction has taken these simple structures into true pieces of art.
And part of the problem is getting everything in the right proportion. That's why I start out, if I see something, take pictures of it. I go down and measure the building, try to get it lined up in proportion. And then I'll take a grafting paper and draw it. And then I started making blueprints. So you draw it out, and then it's just a matter of starting to go to work on it.
Blueprints in hand, pieces of wood, plastic, and just about everything else start forming what will become a new birdhouse.
That windows were really a nightmare at first. I started out just, to be honest with you, they wasn't real good. Then I got a mortising bit that drills square holes, and that didn't work out. And finally I come across the honeycomb for fluorescent light fixtures, and that really made it work good.
If some of these homes seem familiar, it's because they are the next evolution in Chuck's hobby.
This kind of got into historical buildings with reproductions. A lot of this, if it's got some kind of history behind it, this is a replica of the first police station in Evansville. Now the other one I'm working on is the Rights Museum. That was and still is kind of challenging, so it's a slow process. The more pictures you make, the better off you are, because these are all pictures of the Rights Museum. If you look at that picture, that little yellow, that's what this will fit right in here like that. What I'll do, I'll hot glue that.
Pieces of the skyline that most residents of Evansville pass by on a daily basis, reproduced accurately to scale.
It gives me something to do, for one thing. Like when you're retired, you always got to look for challenges and things to work on.
The hobby makes Chuck happy. And yes, even the birds too.
These, I call them city birds. They're not particular. They'll take anything you can give them. If you see my yard, you see that there's not a homeless bird in the neighborhood, so.
Yarn. It comes in different colors and types. But how is it made? Well, like most things in life, it all starts with a little bit of raw material.
So this is a border Leicester whole entire sheep. The whole sheep from head to tail. So this is going to have to be washed and cleaned and carded and then it'll be run through a diz.
Our teacher today is Sonia Addington, the owner of a little shop in Boonville, Indiana, called City Stitch. Much like the wool she works with, her future in yarn work was not always clear.
When we lived in Venezuela, my dad was military. We lived in Venezuela and we would be at the markets. There would be llama and alpaca and the ladies spinning on the hand spindles. And there would just be piles and piles of color and roving and hand spun yarn and the beautiful rugs they would make and the beautiful tapestries, you know, they would just be right there on the side of the road with their weaving going on and on and on. But, you know, 15, 16-year-old girl, I was more interested in life and, you know, just moving on.
She may not have known it at the time, but experiences like this would lay the groundwork for what was to come. Still working on our wool, Sonia gets the material more focused.
After this is clean, then it goes on the drum carder. So then you just keep filling the teeth here. And see how there's this metal part? You take the diz and you lift this up. So you would take something with a hole that small. If it was done at a factory or a mill, it would be done differently, but this is the way that you do it by hand. So the lighter that you do this, the better. You don't want to ever, it's like holding a baby bird that you want to keep safe and you don't want it to go away.
There are a few steps to get from raw wool to yarn, but life has taught Sonia to take a step at a time.
Always wanted a yarn shop, and I caught myself, you know, daydreaming, doodling the floor plan, you know, on papers at work and thinking of names. And I went to Walmart to work, and I know now that what I didn't know then was I was being prepared to run the cash register and you know, work with people on a daily basis and to have a lot of patience. And then I went to work for a local judge, and I was doing some accounting for him, which, you know, I learned how to set up my books during that.
The day-to-day work would weave Sonia the tight thread of experience she'd need to make her growing hobby into a career. Taking a seemingly average life and adding just a bit of color. And speaking of adding color,
so what I've done here is I've filled my pot with water, and I use citric acid, which is the preservative that you use for canning, and pour that in there, and that's actually what makes the dye stick to the yarn. And you always want to use very, very hot water. What I'm using is a powder dye, and I'm just gonna sprinkle this in. So when all that dye soaks into the wool, this water will be clear again, and I'll be able to use that water again. So this will just go into the colander, and the water will drip out, and then I will hang it to dry, and it'll be ready to knit.
it's funny how a little hue and a little tint can bring something together, whether that is on a skein of yarn, or in Sonia's case, finally bringing her dream of owning a yarn shop to fruition.
This was my dream building. You know, I'd driven by it and I said, this is where the yarn shop needs to go. When we walked in here, it was completely filthy. Well, my husband's imagination and hard work is what, and we were both working at the time and remodeling this building. The tin roof that you see on the ceiling, that was taken down from some friends of ours. It was a building. I was trying to chunk off the plaster from the brick, and it opened up and you can see the brick.
The fragments of Sonia's dream finally became a reality.
Every day I walk in the door, it's like, pinch me. Do I really get to work at my own yarn shop?
And as her dream comes to life, so does the final step in creating yarn.
I love spinning. It's a Zen experience. My goal here is to fill this bobbin with black alpaca. It's natural, it hasn't been dyed or anything. It's like rubbing your belly and patting your head. Really, you just, after you learn how to treadle for a while, which is what I'm doing with my feet, you just forget that you're even doing it. It becomes automatic.
As the wool spins into yarn, it can be a bit surprising how the finished product comes out. This too was the experience Sonia had when dreams of having a store finally came to be.
At Christmas, the year I was working at Toyota, we got a phone call and the realtor said, identified himself and said, hey, you know, that deal went through on that building uptown on Locust Street. And I said, okay, thank you very much. So I went to the den where my husband was and I said, did you buy a building uptown? And he said, Merry Christmas. I said, oh. He said, well, the kids and I were gonna, you know, surprise you with that, but it looks like you already know.
In life, it's hard to see how things will work out. Whether that's making a dream become a reality, or just making some wool into yarn. But one thing you can count on is at least you'll be knitting in the end.
My name is Becky Kiesel. I've grown up here in the tri-state. Probably will always live in Posey County.
Life in Poseyville, Indiana is pretty quiet. At noon, the bell at St. Francis Xavier lets folks know it's time for lunch. For Becky Kiesel, this quiet community is more than just a home for her and her family. It is also the foundation for her craft. Sitting by the window, quietly working away, Becky crafts pieces of jewelry. But why do it? Why take the time to create something that you can go out and buy with ease? Well, there may be a few reasons.
My grandmother had a love for jewelry, and it was started with turquoise jewelry. I mean, she just had a passion for jewelry, and I think I kind of inherited some of that. When I was in high school, I had an art teacher, David Rodenberg, who is a well-known artist here in the Evansville area. He was, I guess, had the mindset to kind of break down our high school art class into areas that we had interest in. He would take a small group of us that he taught us how to do jewelry, introduced centrifugal casting. So I was really lucky that it wasn't just a cookie cutter art room, typical classroom.
A grandmother and an art teacher laid the groundwork. Becky would continue to college to major in the art she had grown to love.
I think just the idea of being able to make a piece that if somebody brings you a formal or a prom dress or anything like that, you can make up a unique one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry to match that. I've done that a lot. And of course, if I'm going somewhere and I don't have something that I particularly feel like matches the outfit, I'll whip something up as I'm, 10 minutes out the door.
Creating art that is useful for yourself and your friends is a pretty good reason to love the craft. But as you look closer at Becky's bracelets, earrings, and necklaces, you can begin to see that there is a bit more history under the surface. But to tell you about that history, we have to go here. This building sits quiet now, but not too long ago, these massive brick walls housed the Cargus Furniture Company. Cargus Furniture opened back in 1886, when Evansville was a thriving hub for hardwood furniture. It only took a $600 investment by Albert Cargus, but before long, that investment turned the company into a worldwide producer of high-end furniture. In 2014, the company moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that's where we come back to Becky.
I have a friend, Jamie Ray Scher. She's another artist in the area. She had some relatives that worked at Cargus for years. And when they sold the business, she was looking for a way to have something for them to remember, just like a keepsake. And she went to their surplus sale and purchased some of the brass hardware pieces and came to me with them and wanted me to make some necklaces for Christmas.
A little bit of a makeover gave these simple furniture pieces their own individuality.
Every piece was different, no two were the same. So she was able to look at each one and say, oh, this is perfect for this aunt, and you know, down the line.
The response to the heirlooms gave Becky another reason to keep working.
I go in and I just kind of search and find the different brass pieces just so I know where it came from. After that, I started going in myself and looking through the brass, trying to come up with ideas where I could use a piece, whether I'm altering it or adapting it in some way.
This tranquil trade has given Becky experience and maybe a few extra bucks. But if you ask her, there's a little more to it than that.
I've always had a creative side to me, and whether it's working with jewelry or interior design or anything, I just have always loved the balance that you can create. The jewelry especially gives me an option, like if I have a gift that I need to give, I can almost always come up with something that I've made, and I think family and friends really enjoy receiving something that's been made especially for them.
Sanctuary can come in all shapes and forms. For Troy Miller, he prefers the comforts of an old barn.
The barn was built in the 1880s. That's what we can gather from. It's our bar area, or lounge, you might say. These are dentist chairs. I was going to clean all this off here. This is the ice cream machine that my friend Richard Taylor, RT, he built. It's on a 5-speed transmission, and you could make ice cream, shift gears.
Troy's barn is littered with oddities that span generations. Talk to him long enough, and you will see that these decorations are really just a reflection of Troy's spirit. Go into the larger room of the barn, and you'll see records lining the walls. And in the center sits the stage. That's where you'll find Troy's true passion.
From Boonville to Jockey, I used to dream about fights in Tennyson and rodeo queens. Music is a magical thing. Knew as a kid I wanted to do it, and I embraced it. And like this, be careful what you ask for, because it takes you over after a while. You absorb all of it.
Troy's music tips its hat to the artists of the past, but I'll let you hear for yourself.
Folsonville Highway is a nice ride with a girl from Linville by your side. But your speed in Newburgh, for it's so divine. There's car lots in Chandler if you're interested in buying. Yodelay, 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 yodelay. Mom and Dad were music lovers and collected records, and my first memories of life is sitting around a little record player on the floor playing 45s and dancing around this oval rug on a hardwood floor.
Troy quickly found his place in music. After purchasing a $5 guitar, he became an active participant in the art he had grown to love.
I was crazy. I took it with me to school. I carried it with me in my locker. Everywhere I went, I had my guitar with me.
Though he had picked up his love for the craft from his parents, his father was not too thrilled when Troy decided to make a career out of the path.
He wasn't too sure about the music business, which most I can understand totally, because it is unpredictable when your next check is coming next. He thought I should get serious and think about another trade. Not I could count on music full time.
Despite his father's concerns, Troy persevered, making a career for himself in the music he loved.
I'm a Warwick County cowboy from the strip mines, passing the graveyards, the old knotty pine.
The songs he learned for his audiences reached into the hundreds, songs of the past and songs of his own.
Make sure I'm in tune. If you're around me long enough, I'm always coming up with crazy stuff. I've always entertained myself. That's why I don't have to be out in big crowds. I can have more fun just sitting in this chair and looking in this barn and coming up with things.
Troy writes from his own experiences and philosophy.
They came and they saw Cain's reins did fall as he fell dead from the saddle.
The music became Troy's life, supplying not just a career, but also a haven where he could express himself. A haven that he tries to give back to his audience.
It's all about, it's not about you all the time. You know, you do give back. You've got to, and it'd be a shallow emptiness inside your soul for me if I didn't play and give back to people and sing with my heart. You know, that's one thing. I may not be the best singer or the best guitar player, but I do have that passion.
Passion is a funny thing. When you're doing something you love, it can inspire or even turn critics into believers, even if that critic is your father.
And he started coming out to my shows the last maybe 10, 15 years and seeing how people reacted, and he got up and started singing with me. And he told me one time going to Van Cents or somewhere, he goes, I'm glad that you never listened to me and stuck with the music, because he was enjoying himself singing with me and meeting people from all over. Praise the Lord. One of the most beautiful gifts I guess I could ever have is getting to spend time with my dad in that way in music, and him understanding that I wasn't just doing it to be cool, or it was bigger than me or him. You know, we're a part of something that's important in life. You know, to bring people together and enjoy the moment.
Giving folks a place to get away and come together through the power of song. Thank you for joining us for this first episode of Tri-State Life. You know, telling stories is a passion of mine. So if you have any story ideas you'd like to see on this show, be sure to email me at the email address below. While you're on the computer, be sure to head over to WNIN.org and consider making a donation for programs like this one. For Tri-State Life and WNIN, I've been your host, Gary Bryan. Thank you for joining us.